faces and have you join us, but if you're not comfortable with that, please, you're under no obligation at all to be via video conference. The morning is going to last roughly an hour, and I'm actually really looking forward to discussing what today is going to be about. So what I'm going to do is start off with a little bit of an update on Drive Forward, and I'm going to introduce our topic with belonging. From there, I'm going to be handing it over to Miranda, who also heads up strategic partnerships with myself. And she's actually going to be further introducing the panel of what we're going to be discussing today and introduce who they are. So to start it off, just thank you all very, very much for being here today. To give you an update on Drive Forward Foundation and how we have updated to the pandemic is, since the 17th of March, the team at Drive Forward has all been working from home. And just like many of you, it's very much a shock to the system, I would think. We've been working very hard to see how we can work with our young people to still offer the same one-to-one approach and tailored support that we always have. And very similar to all of you, we've now obviously had to move our work virtually. So to give you an update of what we have accomplished at Drive Forward since the pandemic started, I wanted to share with you some stats that will be coming out on our newsletter. If you are not registered with our newsletter, please let us know, because we're very happy to get you signed up. But since the beginning of it, I'm very happy to say that we at Drive Forward have been able to conduct 245 one-to-ones with our young people. We've been able to host 29 different virtual events. We've had over 218 hours of phone calls with our employment consultants, staff members, and our young people. There's been over 1,300 text messages sent to ensure our young people constantly feel engaged and supported. And from this, we've had 23 video broadcasts that we've been able to do. And I'd like to thank a lot of our partners, because you've been able to contribute significantly to ensuring this happens. So thank you all very, very much. And I just wanted to share a quote as well, which you'll see on our newsletter, that phone calls from my Drive Forward coach keep me motivated. They help me make sure that I complete all of my tasks and that someone is checking on me and makes me feel less isolated. So that's a young person that we support who's 24. So I think altogether in the real world, I think we will all do a very big virtual high five or clap. So thank you all very much for your support in that. Yeah, thanks, Miranda. I think it's different these times to try and see how we can work together. And on that note, I wanted to actually mention Channel 3 Consulting, who's one of our strategic partners. And for the partners that I manage in this group, I've been having great conversations with you periodically throughout this session. And one of the great conversations I had actually last week, I believe it was, with Channel 3, is we were discussing how we can support them and they can support us. And the idea of a virtual library came up. And from this, I've actually spoken to a few team members, and we kind of want to take this idea and run with it. So a virtual library, what it may look like is different partners from different sectors who actually can create a video that we will filter through just to ensure for safeguarding that we can share with our young people. But the virtual library will be anything from videos that could be 5 minutes long to 2 minutes long, to introductions on how you came into the workplace, what it's like to do soft skills, what it's like to conduct an interview, who are you, what is it like to be in your role. And we can actually create a library where we can share this with our young people. So we would love for you to get involved in this. It doesn't take a lot of time in the sense that it's not something you constantly need to be on camera. You can record it, share it with us. We'll go through the safeguarding. We'll do some edits if needed, and we can share it with our young people as and when and put it on our website. So if you're interested in getting involved with this, I will be working with Channel 3 Consulting on this. We're all in very early stages, mind you, but if you are interested, I'd love to create a pipeline of that and we can go from there. So please do let us know once we send up our follow-up email after. Now, to get into the topic today, which I'm very much excited to go into, it's about belonging and loneliness in the workplace. So to give you some insight into this, Our young people that we support, they're brought up in a world where they're forced to adapt to really large changes. And they often feel like they're a statistic and that they have to prove that they're not. And unfortunately, this can remain true for many young people we support when they start the work and they feel disconnected from their colleagues, or they're unable to relate to the experiences and interests of their team members. An example of this is that when we have a young person who enters a workplace, they want to belong there, just like they have if they were hired through the regular channels like anyone else, and not feel like they're from someone at Drive Forward. At the same time, the work with our partners that we have show the difference that one manager or colleague can make through seemingly small gestures to change someone's experience from feeling isolated, and as well as have the sense of belonging. A lot of our partners already incorporate this, and that I thank you very much for. Feeling isolated is not something that is unique only to Drive Forward. I'm sure that many of you here in this video conference have actually felt isolated one way or another in a workplace. So I actually wanted to share some stats that are quite shocking to me, and we will send the link as to where it's from. However, it was based from Total Jobs, which is where we've sourced it. So three stats I wanted to share, which are quite unique, is that a quarter of people in the UK have quit their jobs due to loneliness in the workplace. That over half, which is 63%, believe that their companies do not do enough to combat loneliness in the workplace. And loneliness causes UK workers to take an average of 5 sick days off per year. So just let that sink in for a second, because those stats are quite big. And as a question for this, I just want everyone to think about it, regardless how big your company is, or if you're small, such as Drive Forward, who has a team of about 12 to 14. I wanted to ask you a question, which is, how many of you know the hobbies and the interests of your colleagues? How many of you eat lunch at your desk or actually make an effort to reach out to a colleague who you may not necessarily be so close with? And with our hustle and bustle of life that we once had, how many of you get so caught up in your day and everything that we have to do, we forget to make a colleague a cup of tea, or ask if they would like a glass of water, or actually just interact with them? These are all honest mistakes that we've naturally made throughout the process of what our work once was. But it's really important now to take a step and reflect to see how we can adapt and change our behaviors. So recently, I've been introduced, along with a few other staff members, to a really great podcast by Adam Grant called "We Don't Have to Fight Loneliness in the Workplace Alone." In it, Adam mentioned that it takes 40 seconds, only 40 seconds, to have a high quality connection, a connection which has a measurable impact on both people. And the special thing about this is it only takes one person to make that young person or new employee, whoever they may be, feel included in the workplace. The small changes that we make, and this is something that we advocate all the time for Drive Forward, can make a really big difference in the relationships that we have, not only with our one-to-one approach, but also with employment that we have and we send our young people to. Small changes that our partners have incorporated to ensure our young people feel comfortable are things that we often take for granted, such as, where is the kitchen? This includes the cups. Where's the milk and the tea? Can you just help yourself to a cup of milk and tea whenever you would like? Where's the washrooms? How do you use the IT equipment? I once made a comment about this to one of our partners, and I mentioned to teach them how to use the fax machine. Not that old, but I realized at that point we don't even use fax machines anymore. And this is only about 4 months ago. So I don't know what era I'm in. However, showing a young person, if they think that there's fax machines, that there is kindly no more fax machines, showing them a tour of your office and introducing them to different staff members and where everyone sits. Some of our partners, and I've actually mentioned Channel 3 Consulting before, but this is something I really appreciate that they do, is anytime a work placement comes on board with them, they actually take them out for coffee right away. And that just breaks the silence. It just breaks down the barrier, and it kind of gets them to know them from one-on-one. Some things to also be really conscious to understand about belonging in the workplace is the culture. So for an example, do your team go out for lunch, or do you eat at the office? Reason being is imagine being that first person in the office and you're new to it, and you brought your own lunch when everyone else goes out. You don't want to be that odd person out. And not to say that you would, but you just want everyone to understand the culture that you have in the company. It all starts with little things. So from this, I'm very excited to further introduce this topic and have ongoing conversations. And I'm going to introduce this further more by bringing on Miranda, who is now going to introduce the panel. So once again, thank you all very much for being here today, and I look forward to hearing more about it this afternoon. So on to you, Miranda.
Thank you, Lucy. So yeah, as Lucy mentioned, in order to promote inclusion and belonging in the workplace, we think it's really important to keep having ongoing conversations and transparent conversations around this topic. So that's why we thought a panel would be a great format for today's event. And so to start with, I'm going to ask the panel members to introduce themselves. And if when you do so, you could also explain what belonging in the workplace means to you, as this is a relatively new concept within the conversation of diversity and inclusion, and also why you think it matters. So to start with, I'll hand over to you, Hannah.
Hi, thanks Miranda. Hi everyone, nice to see you. I'm Hannah Christian, I'm Head of Learning at MediaZoo. So at MediaZoo we create blended campaigns, so creative communications, films, digital learning around leadership, compliance, culture change. So a lot of what we do is working with many diverse audiences, and my team itself is very diverse as well. So belonging is something that's incredibly important to me. For me, belonging is about having a sense of acceptance, being able to have a voice in the organisation, being able to say what you think, and yeah, it's just about building positive relationships so you feel connected to your colleagues and team and have pride in what you do. I think it's really important, and very important in what we do, and you know, being able to have a voice to challenge creative briefs when they come in from clients. We want everyone to be able to have their say.
Thank you. Carla, if I can hand over to you to introduce yourself and also to say what belonging means to you. Oh, sorry, Carla, you're on mute still. You were on mute, Carla, so you might have to start again.
Okay. Hi guys. My name is Carla. I am a care leaver. I am also one of Drive Forward's ambassadors. Belonging to me, just like Hannah mentioned, I also believe that is part of building positive relationships. I believe that belonging is being able to be in a place where you can be you. Being in a place where you can voice your opinions, have an opinion, being asked what your opinions are, and just being asked what your backgrounds are in terms of, I don't know, being in conversations that you feel you can have an input, or you're allowed to have an input. So that's what belonging means to me.
Thank you, Carla. And Ricky? Over to you, Ricky.
Hi, sorry, I seem to be having some bandwidth issues, so apologies if I'm all crackly. I'm Ricky Garcia, I'm Director of Simpact CAC. We're a small social enterprise consultancy that specialises in working with the voluntary sector, primarily around organisational development, transformation strategy. At the same time, our profits are reinvested into programmes working with young people, and we're currently in the process of developing a programme to work with young care leavers to help them broaden their networks and gain valuable work experience in ways that they may not otherwise be able to get as a result of being care leavers. particularly with regards to sort of high quality work experience and paid internships, ultimately leading hopefully to a degree level scholarship for a young person. In terms of what belonging means to me, it's a tricky one. Just to add to what other people have already said, which is all valid, I think your role within the organisation needs to be valued. Whether it's at the very beginning, you're at the very beginning of your career and you're kind of at the bottom of the ladder, or in the middle or at the very top, you need to feel that what you're doing is worthwhile and that people respect what you're doing, I think. And that helps to create a sense of belonging. If you feel that you're going into work, and even if the social side is quite good, even if you do like the people you're working with, but your job seems pointless or ineffective or just isn't recognised by the people around you, and especially the people above you in terms of management, that can help that will potentially could add to the isolation that you might feel. So feeling that your role has a purpose, I think, is essential.
Thank you, Ricky. And finally, Siobhan.
Hi, I'm Siobhan. I'm from White Hat, and we're an organisation that are trying to create an outstanding alternative to university through apprenticeships. So we have just over 1,000 apprentices across Greater London, at companies of all sizes, so organisations that only have 10 people and are a startup themselves, right to your Googles and your Santanders and your large corporations. And for me, belonging is really two parts of what's already been mentioned. But first of all, actually feeling you can be yourself and that you don't kind of have to put on a new persona every time you go into work, because you secretly feel that who you are isn't really the right fit for the office. Obviously, everybody turns on their professionality when they go to work, and that's fine. But feeling that you can bring up topics that are genuinely interesting to you, and you can talk about your own music tastes and the things you like to do at the weekend, and there's not kind of a clear culture that you feel you have to kind of pretend to be a part of. And then the second part, I would really echo what Ricky said. If you feel valued, a lot of the time the tasks you're doing don't really matter, because it's going towards a goal that you can tell is really important. So even if that is quite a boring admin task that we all kind of start off in our careers having to do, if you can understand the bigger picture, you can understand your value and how you're contributing to it, then that's really motivating and makes you want to go to work. But when it's obvious to you that your role hasn't really been thought about, or you are kind of just there hanging around and there's no real jobs of value to you, that's really demotivating. So yeah, two key things to me: being your authentic self and actually knowing that you are having value, no matter how small.
Thank you so much. And if I can come back to you, Siobhan, how do you work with your apprentices so that they do feel able to bring themselves to work? And also, how do you work with employers so that they make sure that their apprentices really feel valued?
Definitely, and that's a really good question, because being an apprentice is quite a unique thing. We're having more and more apprentices these days, and more young people that want to do apprenticeships rather than go to university, which personally I think is fantastic, because education is not one size fits all. There have to be different options for how you kind of learn and get on in life. But being an apprentice does mean you haven't kind of been through that generic university experience that a lot of people have. You're younger when you start work often. So if you're in a smaller company, and even a company with 200 people that work there, you might be the only kind of person of your age group in the entire office. So there is kind of lots you have to intentionally do to make sure that that young person is included so that they can really thrive. So at White Hat, that means working really closely as a kind of a team of 3 between the coach, the line manager, and the apprentice. So the coach will have sessions with the apprentice every month, but they'll also then have a progress review every 2 months with the coach and the line manager. And for the entirety of the apprenticeship, it really is working as that team of 3, and the coach being there just as much for the line manager as they are for the younger person entering the workplace, so that they can make sure everything is ironed out before it ever becomes a problem. We then put a lot of investment into our community, And that's because we feel apprenticeships will never be a true alternative to university unless you can have all of that other stuff that we get from university that's actually the really fun stuff that a lot of us kind of might look back and remember, like the societies, the sports teams, any networks, big socials that you go on, how you met your friends. So our apprentices have all of that as well, and that's gone completely virtual. So we've invested in an online hub. We have events every day, from yoga and wellbeing masterclasses to professional development, seminars and workshops, public speaking, and then we have kind of games nights in the evenings as well, and drinks nights hosted by different apprentices. And we think that's just so important because it's such a kind of transformative part of your life. And it is really important that you're getting the opportunity to be connected to other young people, to meet friends. So we invest a lot in that, which I think is quite unique to White Hat as a learning provider.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Thank you, Siobhan. And Carla, if I can come to you, how does this resonate with you from your personal experience? What would you say has made a difference when you started on a Drive Forward work placement or in employment in general, in terms of feeling supported or maybe not feeling supported, and feeling part of the team and valued? Oh.
Yes, just one thing, or one of the things that I found to be very unique in a sense was actually for my recent summer internship, where there was within the organization there was this buddying system. So so that then provided an opportunity for someone who already worked within the organization to develop their leadership skills. And where myself coming in as an intern, also having someone to pretty much just I wouldn't say mentor, but just someone to pretty much catch up with, just how's the work going, and not just having meetings with the line manager. So I had a buddy, and I would meet my buddy, let's say once a week or twice a week, and I feel like that really helped me to pretty much to really just settle in properly, knowing that there's someone that I can go to and just, you know, have a quick chat or just ask any questions that I had. And I think the buddying system really worked well. And yeah, and I feel like one of the reasons why this particular system worked for me is because this was me going back to work after suffering from mental illness. So going back to work after suffering from mental illness, it's like anxiety and you're nervous, and it's like, am I going to be able to work efficiently again? So just having someone there to pretty much just ask me, do you know what you're doing? Do you know, would you like to discuss your tasks a bit more, to get a better understanding? It eased the pressure on me, having to deal with the fact that I'm going back into an environment where there's a lot of people, where I was just recently in a place where I was just isolated by myself.
Thank you, Carla. And if I can come to you now, if I can come to you now, Ricky. So a big reason that partners often work with us is because they want to have a greater diversity in their workforce, which is great. But at the same time, often people, when they start in that workplace, do feel very different. And I think it's great that we really celebrate difference, but also it's not necessarily all the benefits that come from putting different people together can just happen at once. Also, a lot needs to be done by the organisation to ensure that people really feel part of the team, and those are embedded, different structures are embedded organisationally. So I just wondered, when you're working with organisations, what do you do, or what do you advise people do to really make sure that difference can be celebrated, that it really works together, different people are working together so that everyone feels valued and basically so that inclusion comes along with difference.
Okay, I think that's quite a big question.
Yes, sorry.
In the sense that there's two
I
sides to it. And apologies if I missed some of it as well, because the audio seems to be dropping in and out. But in terms of the benefits, I think, to an organization, there are, and then to the kind of what you need to do to prepare an organization for that. The benefits, I think, there's this thing called perception variance, where everybody who looks at a thing looks at it in a slightly different way. And recruiting people from a more diverse background, particularly from young people and people with care experience, etc., means that they will be looking at the thing that they're doing, looking at the product, for example, that the organization is producing in a slightly different way, and will be able to bring their kind of breadth of experience, even if they're quite young and they don't have much work experience, they still have life experience. And the benefits of that lived experience from a variety of different things not only can add to your workplace in terms of making it a more vibrant, kind of lively workplace, but also then means that you might actually end up producing a more relevant product, whether it's a service or a product or whatever, and that you attract a wider audience of people because what you've produced is actually more relevant, more based on a wider group of people's experiences. As an employer, and I've worked over the sort of last 20 odd years, I've worked, started off in youth work and recruited lots of young people. The benefits, the way that you have to prepare people, and it's not just for young people, but people from different backgrounds. And when we were preparing for this, you asked me a question. I was trying to think of an example where where an organisation has really benefited from bringing somebody in. And I realised was that the first person I ever recruited as a manager was a youth worker who had a historical conviction for armed robbery. And it was literally the first interview I'd ever done, the first set of interviews I'd ever done for a part-time youth work role. And he was the most amazing person. He just came across incredibly. The conviction was sort of 25 years in the past. He'd never done anything since then. And the people on the panel with me were very nervous about it. But we took him on, and he was amazing. And what we had to do was kind of work with the rest of the team. And this applies, I think, when you're looking to recruit people from different backgrounds, and particularly young people, and particularly care leavers who don't necessarily have the experience in the workplace that we might take for granted. You have to prep your team and your organization beforehand to say, look, this is why we're doing this. These are the benefits of bringing different people in, not necessarily singling out an individual, but just saying, look, this is what we are as an organization. And it pins all the way back to your purpose as an organization, and your vision, your mission, whatever it is that you have. Making sure that from that point you understand as an organization, and you truly value, and trying to instill it within the team, and try and recruit people who believe in it as well. The variance, the diversity actually has a significant benefit, because then you have a secondary benefit, which is to the community and to society, of giving people an opportunity and a whole tranche of skills that may not otherwise be brought into the workplace, and you may be missing out on.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Ricky. So really getting buy-in across the team. And if I can come to you, Hannah, you do a number of interesting things at Media Zoo to ensure that, like Lucy said at the beginning, we can often get kind of caught up in our busy work lives and forget those the positive impact and the necessity for those small interactions. So it'd be great if you could share a bit more about some of the things that you do at Media Zoo, and also how you got the buy-in from the team to implement those.
Yeah, sure. So I think part of building belonging is it's a habit. It's about reinforcing that. It's not just a one-off event. Building these bonds in the team don't just happen overnight, and it's about reinforcing them. So at Media Zoo, we've introduced two elements. One of them is gratitude, and the other one is shine theory. So gratitude, I think, is a term that's being used a lot more now these days. We've been doing it for about 2 years now, and as a team, we get together on a Wednesday and talk about something that we are proud of and why, and someone we want to say thank you to, and why. So both of these things are really celebratory events that bring the team a lot closer together. They don't have to be work related. They can be things in their personal lives, and it's really brought the team together, and it gives everyone a voice in the organisation. So even the quieter voices, it gets them to speak up and share something about themselves personally. I found it really valuable for some of the more junior members in the team who perhaps don't want to share, and they have this professional guard up that I must be very professional at work. So it's really, really helped the team, and it helps build the connections, gives really valuable insights into what's going on in people's lives at that moment. One of the really memorable moments for me was when one of the more junior members of the team spoke about his experience of coming out to his dad that week and how it had affected him. But it was so emotional. There were tears. It was great. And then the whole team were just so supportive and got behind him. But as I said, we do that every week, and I think it's important to build it as a habit. Now, your second question, Miranda, was how do we get buy-in for this? And it was really difficult to begin with. I personally found it quite cringy to talk about what I'm proud of, because we're not built to do that. We're built to kind of recognise others. But we have to persevere, and it's now really, really beneficial. And the team look forward to it every week, and they're starting to think about it on a Monday for the Wednesday and talk about what they want to share and what they're proud of. And we've moved it digitally now, so we now do it on Zoom, and it's the power of doing it during this time has been fantastic, to call out people who have perhaps been behind the scenes and getting people set up to work remotely. It's just been really fantastic. And the other one I wanted to mention is a concept called Shine Theory. Now, it's a kind of a theory that's been around for about 10 years or so. It was set up when Obama was president, and there were lots of women in the organisation who perhaps weren't in the most senior levels. And they all got together and decided to shine on each other, so to really reinforce each other's ideas and messages, to make sure their voices were heard. So again, it doesn't have to be just about women, it can be for anyone. And as I said, I think it's really important to make sure the quieter voices are heard in the organisation. So they kind of teamed up together to make sure that their ideas weren't talked over, and that they were recognised for their ideas. And what really struck with me was that this confidence can be, it's not just limited to one person. If everyone has this real confidence, it can be shared and everyone can shine on each other. So it's something that we talk about a lot at MediaZoo, and I'm lucky to have a very successful female entrepreneur mentor at MediaZoo that she talks about this a lot, about shining on each other, rather than I think if someone has a great idea, some cultures it can feel competitive, it can make people feel a bit insecure, but actually this confidence is infectious and can create success for everyone. So yeah, those are the two things. There's a couple of other rituals we do about building our shared purpose. We have a positive feedback wall where we stick feedback on. We've now moved that to a Slack channel in the new remote world. And we do something on a Friday for fun times where we all get together and people share something they're proud of or passionate or their hobby, and we take that in turn. So it just allows people to bring themselves to work and share something that they're proud of.
Thank you. And so when it comes to shining on one another, is that just something that you encourage and then you all kind of do as individuals, or is that something that you have kind of formally embedded as well?
So unlike gratitude, where that happens every week, shine is just more of a concept that we make sure people get recognition for their ideas. So as I mentioned at the start, when we get a creative brief in from a client, we want to challenge that and think about how we can do something a bit different to the norm and push the boundaries. So often those ideas come from a variety of people in the team. So it's about making sure those individuals get recognised. And it's the concept the team have really bought into. So for example, when something goes on the feedback wall, that is assigned to the person whose idea or who really worked on it, rather than say the manager who worked on it. It's about giving those individuals recognition.
Yeah, that's really great. So we're going to open up to the audience. So everyone is welcome to ask any questions to our panel. You can either enter them into the chat and I'll read them out, or do feel free to turn off your mic and ask a question yourself if you'd like to. And perhaps while people are thinking of their questions, I'll just ask, I mean, Hannah, you mentioned it then about how you've adapted some of these practices so that you can do them whilst we're working remotely. But if anyone has anything any of our panel members have anything to add on that, both about why it's still so important to be thinking about this topic while we're working on remotely, and also what organisations might do to make sure that team members still feel included. I don't know if anyone on the panel has any thoughts on that.
I think it would be really interesting to hear from Carla on what she thinks of all of those ideas. You know, how does that fit with her? Would she feel comfortable in those situations to be shined on, and how would it impact her?
Handing over to Carla. Well, for me personally, I'm a very you know, bubbly people's person. So for me, that is something that I would love. You know, just having an opportunity to have a say and having an opportunity to really voice my opinion and really just you know, have the opportunity to mention and say what I want to do, or changes that I wouldn't mind to implement within the workplace, whether or not that idea gets put forward. So for me personally, I think it's an amazing idea, because sometimes we can feel like, oh, no one wants to listen to me, or no one really cares what I think, and I think it's amazing just to even feel that your opinion is valued, whether or not your idea will get taken forward, but just knowing that people care about what you've got to say. People want to hear about this. It just makes me smile when you said, what does Carla think about this? And I'm thinking, oh, okay, you know, and it brings a smile to my face. And I think it's very important to feel or to be valued, whether how small or how big.
Yeah, I remember, Carla, that was something, sorry, you said about when you were at Superdrug and them inviting you to the meetings, and even when it wasn't necessarily completely related to your role, and how much that made you feel like I'm part of the team, and yeah, my voice is one to be heard.
Yes, I was invited to well, first I was invited to one meeting, and it, you know, it was just, you're not actually involved, but you can come in and, you know, have a seat and you can take some notes. And during one of the meetings, just being me, I said, well, what does everyone think about A and Z? And everyone was like, oh, where's that voice coming from? It was coming from the little girl around the corner, you know. And it got to a point where I kept being invited into meetings, and I thought, oh, this is good. I like this. So, you know, just I feel like shining that light can give an opportunity or even an idea to be birthed. Something that no one thought, not necessarily no one thought of, but not everyone feels comfortable enough to voice their opinion, or feels comfortable enough to say, well, actually, I don't agree with it being done this way or maybe that way. Mm-hmm. So once a light is shone on somebody who might just feel like, you know what, I'll just say it, it then sparks all different other lights and all different light bulbs going bing, bing, bing. Okay, well, I thought, and before you know it, a whole discussion is going, and you're thinking, well, we should have done this earlier. But that's just, I think, yeah, that's just.
But I think. Also, I see what you're getting at, Martha, in terms of, and if I can come back to you, Hannah, in terms of the difference between shining a light on someone and also someone feeling singled out, which is something that people who we work with sometimes feel when they go into a workplace. You know, they're either the care experience person or they're representing that group. And I know actually when I first saw you speak at a panel, this is something you picked up on, being the first woman in the leadership team of your current company. And so it'd be great if you could say a bit more on this in terms of the distinction about, yeah, shining a light on someone, but also not someone not feeling singled out or feeling different?
Yeah, it's something that I struggled with personally. As you mentioned, I was the first female on the senior leadership team at Media Zoo, which was quite a big event, and I felt a little bit awkward at the time because I just didn't want to be known as a female leader. I wanted to be known for my talents and how I'd got there, really. So I kind of tried to downplay it a bit, but then actually one of the more junior members of the team, she was just so in awe and she was so proud, and she kind of looked up to me. And once she said this, I kind of felt a little bit different about it, and I was like, oh, I'm kind of role modeling this now, and she sees that could be her in the future, so I need to now embrace it. And as soon as that happened, it was totally different for me. And now there's a lot more women on the senior leadership team, which is fantastic, and really not just gender is a lot more diverse, which is fantastic and really proud of. Yeah, sometimes being singled out like that I do get it, it's not always easy, and some individuals don't enjoy that. But I think we've got a great culture with things like gratitude, where everyone gets a voice and everyone talks about what they're proud of. So aside from Shine, the gratitude piece really kind of brings that collaborative element together. So everyone has a say, and it's not just Shine on one person all the time. Gratitude brings everyone together, because we do have very multi-skilled, talented teams, from film producers to consultants to researchers from all different backgrounds. And it's important that we do bring all of those ideas and opinions together to create big blended campaigns, as I said at the start, for different audiences. The clients we work with from all different backgrounds, all different levels, from very senior leaders at banks to people who work in warehouses for retail operations. So it just varies completely. So the importance of having these different voices from different backgrounds is really key for us. Yeah, I do get what you mean about singling people out. I think it's just about how it's framed, and that a lot of that was to do with my own personal journey to get into that position.
No, I think that's a really good point in terms of how it's framed, and if it's something that's celebrated and as a role model, or not kind of playing into maybe stereotypes, or I think that's really, really good. Sarah, you mentioned that you had a question. I don't know if you'd like to ask it. That'd be great.
Yeah, so sorry, I don't know whether to type or say it. So basically, I'm the HR manager at Channel 3 Consulting, and we've had about 5 work placements through Drive Forward in our relationship with Lucy so far. Naomi, my colleagues on the call, and I have created a schedule that we thought was really supportive of individuals. We know enough about their background to be able to kind of make sure that it's a safe and welcoming environment for them to come to. But we also are very conscious, and I wondered what your panel thought about how we juggle this around, we take them off site for a coffee so they get to know us and feel welcome and confident about going back into the workplace with us and starting their week-long schedule. We do a meet the team, like a round robin session, so they understand what kind of roles make up our team and what we do in the business, and what potentially they could aspire to become themselves. We do lots of one-to-ones with them. But on the last day of our week-long work placements, we're very conscious that we now send them out into the world into other work placements or potentially employment. And we were a bit like, okay, I feel like I need to do a wrap up and say, this might not be your experience, across the board. You might go to an employee next that is huge and doesn't have time for those one-to-ones, or doesn't have time to take you off site for a coffee. And so I just wondered how people juggle with these great individuals coming through Drive Forward. How do you juggle kind of being inspiring and welcoming to them, but also set them up for the real world that might be much more black and white and much more of a bit of a brutal environment, where it is kind of you're joining 1,000 employees and it's not that softly approach.
I think, Siobhan, you'd be good to answer this question, given your experience of working with white hat apprentices who often enter into large companies. So it'd be great to have your thoughts.
Yeah, definitely. I think that is it. There is very different cultures across different companies, and for us, we're with the young people for much longer, so that does enable you to put a lot of structures in place. Their apprenticeship will be about 18 months long, so you can put a lot of structures in place so that if it is a workplace that aren't as used to having a young person in the office, our apprentices are incredibly diverse from a range of socioeconomic backgrounds, over 50% BAME, and we've got young people who have caring responsibilities, both for parents, siblings, or their own children. And they might not be kind of the traditional profile that the company has employed before. So there is sometimes some learning to do, but we very much do that before the young person would join the workplace. The young person has what we call a flying start before they go into that workplace, with all of the apprentices starting in work at the same period of them, so that they can kind of get a kind of day of workshops about what to expect before they get in. And then you have all the structures whilst you're there. So for us as a learning provider, it's all about making sure you have all of those structures and all of those touch points so that you can pick things up early, and that you're supporting both the employer and the young person in the transition. But yeah, I appreciate if you're only with a young person for a week and you've given them an amazing experience, there must be kind of that nervousness about saying goodbye to them. But it's, if anything, all of those experiences will build their resilience as well, because that is the world of work, and you find a culture that you like, and that's when you tend to stay there. So I do think experiencing different work cultures is also really important.
Yeah,
Okay,
and
thank you.
I think what you really do at White Hat is building that community outside of work as well, which is something that we do at Drive Forward, but maybe we could look into more with people, even linking up people who had different partner work placements, now starting work, and so they also have those support groups. So
definitely, and it really investing in your community and investing in kind of all of the structures we've talked about does have business benefits. And so, for example, the turnover is a really big thing for companies. They don't want to have to keep paying to recruit new people, and that's something that we found it's actually paid off to invest in all of these structures, because I think the usual retention rate for apprenticeships is about 67% will actually stay and complete, whereas at White Hat it's over 90%, and then that pays dividends. So it's a lot of work to put in up front, but in terms of the longevity that you'll keep your talent, it pays off.
Yeah, definitely. Does anyone else have any questions for our panel? I think we've got about 5 minutes left, so if anyone wants to get in a final question.
I was hoping to respond to the question as well.
Oh yeah, great.
So we have interns at Media Zoo, and we get them involved to run presentations at the end of their internship. And sometimes they do a standard PowerPoint, sometimes they'll put together an animation or a video or do something a little bit quirky just to summarise what they've learned, and it also shows a bit of their personality. A lot of them hate it at the time because it's quite scary to present to their team, but I think it's really important skill to learn to present your ideas, and so that might be a nice way to summarise the end of their week-long experience, is to do something that they can bring their personality into, whether it be a presentation or a video, or I don't know, as part of our fun times. Sometimes people have I remember one of them, we did a session on haikus, so everyone had to share their week, what went well, what didn't go so well, and what have they learnt, but doing it in a haiku or a poem or interpretive dance stuff, silly things like that. So I mentioned fun times earlier. That's something we do on a Friday just to kind of wind down the week, thinking about those 3 things: what went well, what didn't go so well, and what have you learned. So that might be a nice kind of ending, so they don't just leave, and that might be a nice ending.
Yeah, and also a nice way to encourage people that, you know, you can bring yourself to work and you don't have to just feel I have to be this way at work and this way outside. Like that.
Can I add to that as well? I think in an ideal world, you would, if you're preparing young people to move on to new employers and where they don't necessarily have that kind of positive culture, or they don't have the time for one-to-ones, ideally they will have. But I think it's important to remind young people that they also have a choice. Even when there's a kind of a difficult working in, maybe in a difficult employment market, in particular, I think we're about to head into a difficult employment market. if a young person gets a job in an organization and they don't feel valued, or they're not being treated appropriately, or they don't feel they're getting even the basic kind of levels of support, then they shouldn't stay in that job for the sake of it. You know, it's easy said than done, but they have the, you know, their value is still their value, and they can give that value to a different employer if they choose to. It's not easy, but it's possible. And I think people shouldn't feel that I've got this job now, it's amazing, I've got this job, I absolutely hate it, but I've got to stay in it because it was such an achievement for me to get here. It'd be more of achievement if you can continue an achievement elsewhere if you need to.
Yeah, thank you, Ricky. That's a really important point.
Can I add to that as well? I think that is really important, and kind of practically to make that happen as well. Are you really empowering your staff, especially your staff who are more junior and might just be so thrilled to be there, which is something that we definitely get from our apprentices. They're just so in awe of this company that they've been placed at, that actually speaking up about something that didn't sit well with you is like a really big thing to suggest that somebody does, when they're just like, they feel that they've achieved their dreams being placed in a company. So does your, like, looking at your company and thinking, are there really channels where people could feel that they could raise something, and are our managers trained to take feedback well? Is there that culture that more junior staff can give feedback upwards or not? Because if there isn't, then that's when these problems happen, because you should be able to give that feedback that you're not having a good time and something's done about it. Because you will always have workplaces that you think, oh, this isn't what I thought it was going to be, or whatever, but that might be able to get sorted out. And in a few occasions where that has happened, apprentices might be able to move team, or maybe they're able to shadow a department that they're really interested in, and that kind of keeps them wanting to stay there. Or that there's often ways around this before you need to throw in the towel, but it does mean that you have to have those clear opportunities for young people to raise their voice, because it's a very daunting thing for them to be able to do.
Yeah, that's a really great point, and really interesting what you said about making sure that managers are trained as well to be able to take that feedback. Carla?
Just added on to that. As I mentioned before, during my summer internship at Superdrug, I was basically preparing to start my master's, and I thought, you know, digital marketing, this is what I want to do. But when I got to Superdrug, although my internship was in marketing, I was then, you know, offered, or I was then asked, do you want to, would you like to try this department and that department within marketing? A part of me was just like, well, no, I don't, because I like digital marketing and I don't want to try others. But just being able to be encouraged and just pushed a little bit to outside of my comfort zone, I found that there's other aspects of marketing that I actually liked, that it's really highlighting the importance of experience and really trying out different things, and really letting the young people know that it's okay to like what you like, but it's also good to just try different things, because you never know what you might fall in love with. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I thought I would just highlight that.
That's a great point to end on, I think. As we're at 10, it's now 10, so I don't want to keep you guys for ages, unless, do you have anything final to add, Lucy?
No, just thank you all very much for being there and being a part of Drive Forward. And even if it has all moved virtually, I still feel like you are all helping us create our little community that we're still working really hard. And it's just been really nice to hear everyone from the panel. So just thank you all very much for just being part of our team.
Thank you so much to the panel as well. You were fantastic. Some really great insights. Sorry, Lucy, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, honestly, I'll say thank you 100 times over. So I'm best you did interrupt.
Great. Thank you so much for joining.
Absolutely. And Miranda and I will send out an email as well, just to say thank you. And if you do want to get involved with the virtual library. Definitely. Thanks, guys. Well, everyone take care, stay safe. And yeah.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everyone.
Bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
1, 2, 3.